All right, welcome to the conversation. Let's have a conversation about whether the left wing is going to win the future. Now, normally I'm super optimistic about that. These days, though, I need someone to help explain to me where the left is. And so we brought on Michael Levitin here, who might be just the guy. He's a journalist, professor, and author of the new book, Generation Occupy: Reawakening American Democracy. Michael, it's good to have you on. You've caught me on a bit of a cranky day, so I'm going to come in with some skepticism, and let's see how we sort this out. So, what do you mean by Generation Occupy? Well, let's start there.
Generation Occupy. Well, as people have recognized, many have not, but this is the 10-year anniversary. It was in September when Zuccotti Park was formally taken over as an encampment by people who launched Occupy Wall Street. You know, I see after following the trends that took off, Occupy the movement only lasted really several months in the public eye, that it was visible. Then the camps were cleared, and we all know the story. It sort of disappeared. Almost into thin air. And most people, really a lot of people, Americans, didn't look or see or think about the movement very much more after that. It left us with the language of the 99%, right? It gave us the crisis of inequality. It put it on the map for the public. And that's what most people recognize. My story attempts to chart the dramatic and really quite remarkable last decade that we've just gone through. The second half of Obama's presidency, and of course the Trump presidency. But the social movements that emerged in this period, and the radically aggressive demands that became much more mainstream after Occupy, and Bernie Sanders and people on the left voiced these once fringe demands that have now become progressive priorities that are in the mainstream conversation, and they're what are being fought over in the reconciliation bill for trillions of dollars right now in Congress. This generation of protesters and activism is what I referred to that Occupy ignited, and that we've seen flourish in a decade since.
Have we though? So that's where my skepticism comes in. So on the one hand, yeah, I'm totally familiar with all of the changes that has happened. Occupy Wall Street was great. I covered it there, and I even launched Wolfpack there to get money out of politics. But I also attended the meetings, and the left loves picking each other apart. And so now some of those things became popular. The policy proposals that came out of it, but at the same time, it hasn't done anything to actually get them into law. So we're still getting mauled in Congress. We're getting mauled in the media. And I know that the younger generation is very progressive. I talk about it all the time on the show, and I'm thrilled about that. But honestly, I don't even see them anymore. Okay, where's the army behind AOC and the Just Democrats and demanding this or demanding that? We're trying, we on TYT pushed for $15 minimum wage to be included in the COVID relief bill, but where is Generation Occupy? I see the right wing everywhere, right? And just where are they? Where's the younger generation that's supposed to come and be the cavalry?
They're coming for you this weekend, Cenk. I promise it. No, listen. I think that clearly the coronavirus, clearly the end of the Trump era, and what we saw in 2020 with the George Floyd protests. I think that if you didn't see it then you must not have been looking. I think that what we saw in 2020, this coming together of the economic inequality argument that Occupy made a decade ago, really joining with the racial inequality and injustice argument, we saw tens of millions of people in the streets making demands for systemic reform. That is not going away. That generation is here to stay. What we have with the climate protests, we didn't see them recently at the COP26, at least not in America. But the previous year, just before the coronavirus, you saw millions of young people taking to the streets as part of the global climate strikes. And right here in America, usually the rest of the world protests and Americans kind of sit tight. This generation showed up for those climate strikes. They showed up for the March for Our Lives, which is still a vibrant movement demanding gun reforms and sensible.
No,
Well,
but Michael,
I mean-
I got to push back. Again, I'm on your side. I desperately want this to be true, and I know that the numbers are there. I see the polling. I'm not idiot corporate media, right? And so at the same time, so March for Our Lives, we got zero gun reform, and and when Congress does nothing about it, there's no pushback, there's no rage, there's no nothing. And so, climate change, it's, that's doing better than the rest, but it's about to get killed and build back better in the Senate. Then George Floyd, you're indisputably correct that there was massive protests, not just the young, but a lot of Americans now can't, sick of how black people are being treated by cops in this country, but zero police reform in the Senate, killed by Republicans and idiot corporate Democrats, and no pushback, nothing. Where are they?
Hey, the crystal ball, where is it? I wish as much as anyone, I would like to see, and one thing to have some hope or a sense that where are they? Movements start out of seemingly nowhere often. The Arab Spring started by one man self-immolating, lighting himself on fire in Tunisia, a vegetable vendor that set off an entire wave of uprisings and revolutions that led to the Indignados and movements in Spain that led to Occupy Wall Street. Things can emerge in some unpredictable moment, but you're very right that right now feels like a real ebbing. And where are the protesters? They were out by the millions, but then, as you say, our leaders in Congress failed to act. But just wait and see how long they will be able to fail to act when 70, 80, 85% of the US public is behind these measures that they refuse to pass, say in this
but Michael,
bill.
again, let's keep it real, brother. That's where we are now, 75 to 80% on most of progressive priorities. On lowering drug prices, it's 88%, 9 out of 10 Americans want it. And then Manchin and Sinema go, no, our donors don't want it. We're corrupt and we took bribes from the drug companies, and everybody goes away. Nobody's fighting for it. It's done.
I think that the generation that came out of Occupy has learned a lot of things. Occupy was this wonderfully beautiful, original, but really chaotic and kind of finally self-defeating movement, right? We all saw that. It didn't want structure, it didn't want plans or policies. But the generation that came out of it organized, and many of the movements, like take the Sunrise Movement, for example, essentially driving the climate movement for Gen Z and the younger people, who really did put forward a Green New Deal that AOC brought to Congress. Just because our short-sighted congresspeople and senators can't pass these measures that are so sensible and which will rejuvenate our economy, build our green energy transition, all these really intelligent ideas, that's their problem. But you're right, this new generation is gonna have to step up. I think they're in the process of trying to figure out, having restructured themselves. They grew from Occupy. The same people who were at Occupy Wall Street helped shepherd in this new generation by teaching them to make more concrete policy reform, strategic movement building, having a blueprint for what you want to achieve in the real policy realm and going and doing it. Now, the fact that they haven't yet done it means you're right. There's gonna need to be an escalation, because if they're not listening to what the people demand, then the people need to figure out a new way of forcing them to listen. Occupy Wall Street was this original call to action, right? Occupying parks. You didn't hear us, the 1%. We're out of work, we're in college debt, we're gonna occupy. And maybe something like that, or something dramatic, mass strikes, shutdowns, marches that get the public's attention are gonna be needed now.
Yeah, people talk about a general strike. People talk about a general strike. That ain't gonna happen. I think that that's super interesting. It made a giant difference in Egypt in their revolution. But who the hell's gonna organize a general strike? With whose army? So, Michael, my point is, and once you get past the grumpiness today, but it's justified. It's justified, right?
We're all outraged,
right? But there is a reason why. There is a reason why people aren't in the streets, because we have no leadership. And by the way, I saw at Occupy, anytime a leader stepped up, everybody else wanted to tear him down, right? Or tear her down. Because, oh, why are you the leader? Maybe I should be the leader. And so there are some leaders, by the way, you talk about the guy who self-immolated in Tunisia. I've self-immolated 17 times to try to get people to fight. And what happens? Other left-wingers come in and attack and go, oh no, well, you did it the wrong way and you were slightly rude and NPR told me to whisper, and over again. Don't we need a populist leader to say, right now, I want you to go and protest, surround Congress. Don't be like the idiot right-wingers and actually break in or do violence. But God damn it, we need paid family leave. We need lower drug prices. We need $15 minimum wage. Right now, as elected officials, I don't see a single one doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you see, well, Cori Bush, she went out and slept on the steps to demand, she did several nights sleeping out on congressional steps. I think the AOCs and the more radical, the anti-corporate, the real progressive generation of new Democrats really would be ready for that. And they know that they need that. I think the new generation of younger elected leaders know that you need a movement behind you to force those policies into reality. But I very much agree. I don't know why, I'm not quite sure. I think that this identity politics moment we're in, the culture wars, the fact that the left really still manages to be really expert at kind of eating away at itself, as you say, and tearing itself apart by sort of a purity. Everything's got to be speaking to everyone all at once, and if anyone feels somewhat slighted, the project is doomed somehow, and the right-wing media gets a hold of it. It's really a moment in which the left needs to re-examine itself. But the purpose of what I wanted to tell in this story is a hopeful story because we have seen growth. We have grown and emerged from this Occupy era less disorganized and unstructured than before. We might not have the answers. The new movement, clearly, the new generation has to figure out new techniques, new skills, but they're so adept at technology. They know really how to organize intuitively and do it in a way that sort of speaks to their generational desperation for change, whether it's climate, student debt, healthcare. That I do have confidence that they're gonna find it's not in the streets right now. It should be, you're right, congressional juggling and this circus act where they don't actually get anything done should be bringing out the masses. But I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen soon.
Michael, thank you for coming on and putting up with me.
All right, Cenk, good. Onward to the frontier, to the barricade.
The barricades, for God's sake, finally. I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you or that you were doing it?
That it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richey. We got a lot happening today. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? The white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it though.
Do all of you know the Young Turks?
an outlet like yourself that are willing to cover this story from the very beginning.
You have the Young Turks and a bunch of other progressive forces saying this is the time to fight for our values.
And I think right now there are a lot of progressive voters, many leftists who feel like they don't have a home.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
What we've done is sustainable, slow, healthy growth. And I think that's the way news should be, where you don't rely on sensationalist stuff. You don't lean on whatever's trendy in the news at any given moment. You know, you just go with the truth.
You gave me a platform.
You've uplifted so many other progressive voices through this network, and you're constantly looking for people that you can amplify through the work we do, through the infrastructure that you built at TYT.
It takes those early people who believe that can really be the seeds of this movement, and that has been the Young Turks.
We're super serious about the news. We also managed to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We're not TYT, you're TYT.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
All right, back on the conversation. So now, of course, Republicans are planning to burn down the country. It's about a specific issue. We'll explain. And Democrats are planning to do very little about it. So, welcome to America. It's a regular day here. So this one's about the debt ceiling. We brought on Ben Wink here. He's an economy reporter at Insider. We've talked to before. He's written about this. We want to talk to him about it. Ben, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem. So Republicans are playing chicken with the debt ceiling. It's mental. It's been raised 78 times. Not raising it would be a catastrophe. And the Democrats, as usual, are feckless and have no idea how to fight back. So that's your summary. But first, the things that you had in your article about what Moody's says would happen if they do not raise the debt ceiling. And just for the folks at home, real quick, the debt ceiling is, hey, we owe this money. We, by law, it can only have this much debt, so we need to raise it because we already spent the money, so we should pay our debts. Otherwise, the dollar won't have the full faith and credit, and it'll be a disaster. But Moody's explains the disaster. So Ben, what did they say would happen if we don't raise the debt ceiling?
Yeah, so a couple months back when we were in the same position with the same action taking place between Democrats and Republicans, Moody's came out with these estimates that said, well, first off, hitting the debt ceiling without raising it, suspending it, just crashing through that limit, it would wipe out around $15 trillion in household wealth through assets, right? Stocks, bonds. Financial markets would just plummet. I mean, it would be, they said that stocks would fall about a third before they start to stabilize and maybe move back up. And then also you have to keep in mind that the economic recovery is far from over. We are not fully healed yet. And Moody's said, if we hit this ceiling, if we burst through this cap, the economic turmoil that would occur would wipe out around 6 million jobs. So that would really put us way back as far as the labor market recovery. It would cost American families, households, trillions of dollars. I mean, this is the worst case scenario, especially when you consider, we are just kind of getting back onto the horse with hiring, with consumer spending.
So Ben, people gotta ask at home, why? Why would all those catastrophic things happen? By the way, not a good sign for our economy that if you do one little thing wrong, $15 trillion and 6 million jobs are gonna disappear overnight. Bit of a house of cards, but that's a slightly separate topic. In terms of the why, I think most people don't know why. Why would that catastrophe happen?
So the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, right? Other countries, corporations, people around the world rely on the dollar to be stable. And that stability is built on the foundation that the US will always repay its debts. It always has, and that consistency, that stability is why the dollar is so strong, why it has this reputation globally. The moment the US hits the debt ceiling, exceeds it, and then throws the country, the government into default, that immediately erodes that bulletproof reputation the dollar has. And you can't get that back, right? You can't put this toothpaste back in the tube. Once you do that, that's done. Immediately borrowing costs will skyrocket, right? Because the dollar just doesn't have the relevance internationally. Other countries might look for a different reserve currency. The US will lose that economic power from its currency because it's just not as dependable as it used to be. So that translates to, for everyday Americans, that translates to higher borrowing costs for car loans, for mortgages. If you miss a credit card payment, you're going to be paying more in interest. Service members, if you hit the debt ceiling, they won't receive compensation. Federal workers won't receive paychecks. Social security checks won't go out. I mean, this would really affect everybody.
Yeah, let me add to that explanation. Everybody knows the saying, the rich get richer, right? But there's a part of a reason why they do, right? Because, so for example, when Elon Musk borrows money based on his stock portfolio, Ben, everybody knows that he's got enough money to cover that loan, so he can get it at a really low interest rate, right? Whereas if you're poor and you really need money in an emergency, you got to go to a payday loan, and that charges you several 100% interest rate. I mean, it way higher, literally 100 times higher than what Elon Musk has to pay. And so when we go past the debt ceiling, basically we're declaring that we're a banana republic and we might not pay our debts. So then people then turn around and charge us really high interest rates because they say, well, now it's not safe to put our money in America. Apparently you guys are clowns and might not pay us back. Is that a fairly decent explanation of it?
I think it's a fair way to put it, and you have to realize, the damage or the eroding at the reputation of the dollar can happen before we even hit the debt ceiling. We came pretty close back in the Obama years, and even getting close to hitting the debt ceiling, right, within a few days, that can start to shake financial markets. That can start to lead people to think maybe the US can get closer to default than we thought before. The fact that they're getting this close makes me lose confidence in the dollar. And so that cycle, that spiral starts to happen before you even hit the debt ceiling.
Obviously, the Republicans are maniacs for even proposing this. This is not about new spending. They're saying, why don't we just do like Donald Trump does and go, I just don't want to pay my debts, right? So, like every reporter knows they're lunatics, right? But you can't call them lunatics because, oh, well, neutrality and all that stuff. So, but the Democrats could call them lunatics, but they don't. What the hell's wrong with them? So you have a quote in here where Sherrod Brown is supposed to be like big, strong, progressive senator. This is, he asked the Republicans, why not just do what presidents of both parties and leaders of both parties in the House and Senate have done in the past? So you might say, what's wrong with that quote? Well, what are you pleading with the Republicans for? Why isn't the quote that Sherrod Brown is giving you and the other reporters is, the Republicans are raging lunatics who are threatening to destroy the American economy? Isn't that, the Republicans do that to the Democrats all the time. Is that kind of unbalanced playing field partly encouraging and emboldening Republicans to play chicken with our economy because they think these schmuck Democrats can't fight back, so we might as well just do whatever the hell we want?
I think part of it is also the fact that Democrats still really want to do this, solve this problem in a bipartisan way.
Why?
They could.
Can I ask Ben?
I think because they hold on to this semblance of, oh, we can solve things in a bipartisan manner, maybe more than Republicans do. I mean, you look at the infrastructure bill, that was something that was passed through a bipartisan, in a bipartisan way. Maybe they're clutching onto that.
Nah,
I think
no, Ben, I'll tell you what's going on. Sorry, I keep interrupting. But
go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Democrats want to be bipartisan. it's not because like I called them idiots while you were talking, but it's not just that they're stupid. It's that they have the same donors. They have the same donors as the Republicans. So but they have the whole Senate, they have the whole House, they have the presidency. They don't need the Republicans at all. Republicans never ever asked the Democrats to come along. They never helped the Democrats by saying, let's do this in a bipartisan way so you can get credit too. You'd have to be a schmuck, an idiot in politics to do that. But the Democrats do ask Republicans for permission because in reality, Ben, they're asking their donors for permission, aren't they?
You kind of get the same thing with, I think, the SALT, state and local tax deduction. It's a similar deal where you're starting to see that Democrats do have some really big money interests as well, and that's where you start to see some fraying. Right, Bernie is coming out and saying, "Wait a second, we're not the party trying to pass these tax cuts for the rich." And so that is at play, right? You do have some splits within the Democratic Party, and some people are more outspoken about it. Others will pipe down and try to again uphold that bipartisanship. But I think it's important to remember that we were in this same problem just 2 months ago. Republicans caved at the last minute. McConnell came out with a last minute extension of 2 months. Here we are now. We're going to hit the debt ceiling estimated on December 15th. And both sides are saying the same thing. Republicans are not going to give them, or at least according to Minority Leader McConnell, they're not going to give that same kind of extension. Democrats still want to do it in a bipartisan way, but they can do this through reconciliation, right? There is an avenue for them to do this on their own. And they're hinting that that's not out of the cards. But
why wouldn't you just do that? No, Ben, this is so silly. First of all, the Republicans are clearly bluffing. They have the same donors as the Democrats. There's no way their donors are gonna let them burn $15 trillion of wealth. That is not gonna happen, okay? So the only way that the Republicans would risk doing that is if we're in the Trump era and they're saying, yeah, we burn down the economy and we blame it on Biden so we could take over and do a full fascist takeover, right? That would be the only reason they would do it. And the only reason they would do it is because they're so emboldened by Democratic weakness that they think these idiots will never ever fight back. We could burn the whole economy to the ground and then blame it on Biden and they'll easily believe us, easily, right? So that's the only reason why anybody would ever contemplate this. So does anybody ever ask the Democrats, hey schmucks, they're threatening to burn down the country and you wanna work with them? Like seriously, how does that make any sense?
I was on the Hill this week. I was asking them pretty much that. I said, why not? You've heard from Republicans, they've said, we're not gonna give you this break again, and we're not gonna join you on this. I asked them, why not do this through, you have the avenue, right? You can do this through reconciliation. And they said, they're saying, we're exploring all options. The problem is the clock is ticking. Reconciliation, if they do that, is gonna take a few weeks. And so they don't have that much time. I think, I've pushed this with them. They just say, we're talking about it. We're figuring out a plan. And it's still the same stagnation that we saw last time.
They're talking while Rome burns. Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.